if it could be not only used, you were talking about using it for medications and why certain medications work on some patients or have a different effect on other patients. What about the disease itself? Is there any way that there's a phenotyping involved there? Like this virus, it just seems so random. It seems, is it random or is it something that is there that well, I certainly don't know about, but maybe hasn't been discovered yet, or I don't know.
Well, certainly, of course, it's majority of our work is focused on different type of disease, and like we know, lots of genes associated with the type 2 diabetes we already know, and type 1 diabetes we know is there's some certain genes on your chromosome 6 is highly associated with that. And when we talk about the COVID-19, of course, we did lots of study on COVID-19. And one interesting study, we call that, what we did is like, at the very beginning, because we don't understand what COVID-19 looks like. It's this unknown disease. And we gradually collect some information from patients who test positive. And we also have some patients came into the hospital and test negative. So what we did, informatically, and we can compare their present symptoms. So that will help us to gradually understand, is there any unique symptoms strongly associated with the COVID-19 test positive? So we recently got a paper published. We find probably you already heard from news or media, it's like COVID-19 significantly associated with loss of taste and loss of smell. Yeah, we found that signal is 2 weeks earlier than CDC released the warning.
Hello, and welcome to Informatics in the Round, a podcast designed to help everyone become part of the dialogue about topics in biomedical informatics. I'm Kevin Johnson, physician and informatics chair at Vanderbilt, found on Twitter at @KBJVanderbilt, on my Podbean site at www.kevinbjohnsonmd.net, or on the web in other ways. Heck, you could probably find my cell phone if you know the dark web. Our second episode of the year is fascinating. Here's a clue, if the opening segment didn't give it all away. What do phenotypes, COVID, cancer, Spiderman, and Jurassic Park have in common? See if you can answer that at the end of this episode. If you can't figure it out, go to our website and I'm sure I'll leave you a better clue there. We welcome back Shannon Rich, who is a regular and a constant boost of energy and cynicism. Jane Bach also returns for this episode, a well-known and really terrifically insightful songwriter. And she sings a great song that actually hints at one of the subtexts of this conversation. Wei QI Wei is a national expert in phenotyping, which is essentially the science of using analytics and natural language processing to uniquely identify subgroups of people in a medical record system who have specific defining characteristics. By the way, you know how on our phones we have to say things like excuse the typos? Well, please forgive any pops or extraneous noises in the world of the Zoom recording, present recording included. We're planning to upgrade our audio soon. Of course, once we all get vaccinated, we'll make sure that we can all get face-to-face, which will be even better. So as a reminder, I love feedback. Please message me on Twitter at KBJVanderbilt, or leave me comments on my Facebook site for Informatics in the Round, or on my Podbean site. I am waiting for your ideas. Well, let's get to it. This is going to be a lot of fun and a little bit scary. Hope you enjoy.
So, Wei QI, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good.
Hi.
The person with the really cool hair and the great glasses is Jane Bach. And as you can tell,
is that me?
it's you, right?
Of course.
Yes. And Jane, who's been on here a couple of times, as you can tell from the background, has a little bit of a history in music.
Oh, sorry.
Well, what are you not? Is that not your studio, or you're not your area?
It is. I'm in my music room and I forget. And it's something like, well, maybe I'll turn it, but wherever I turn, there's stuff hanging up on the wall.
Oh,
Just
come on, do me a favor. Turn the camera 360 so we can see.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Do it, Jane. So
Starts there. Wait.
Uh-huh.
Okay. And then
And I saw your husband's arm.
it goes there. And then those are just all albums and records that I either have songs on or that I produced, or here we go, going around the back.
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh, I love the guitar pillow.
Oh, isn't that cute?
It is.
Yes, I got that.
and she and I have a collection in common as well. Giraffes.
Oh, yeah, I didn't even show you my giraffe collection.
Oh, come on.
I've
Swing
got-
it around. You can do it.
I love giraffes.
Okay.
I dearly do.
Okay. So
And-
Wei QI, introduce yourself. I can tell you this. So Wei QI is an absolutely brilliant informatician, data scientist, but he is a star in our department. He does this thing called, he does this precision medicine topic, but he does a very specific aspect of it, and he'll talk about that. He's also just a really nice human being. He's one of the most productive people, but he always has a great attitude. And I just, he is going to be everybody's favorite mentor in the next 10 years. They're all going to want to work with him. They already do. But hey, Wei QI, what's your favorite thing to do outside of work?
I collect teapots. I drink lots of tea. And I play golf. We have a foursome every weekend, so we play together.
Yeah.
I'm not that good. I'm just still got my handicap is probably over 20. Sometimes I even hit over 100. It's okay.
I don't even know what a handicap is.
I don't understand anything about golf. I'm looking at my husband and laughing because he loves golf.
So everybody, welcome to Informatics in the Round. We have 3 guests today. 2 you've heard from before. I'll say their name and then they can say something back. So Shannon.
Hi, Kevin.
Jane.
Hi, Kevin.
Hi, everyone.
And then Wei QI Wei. Wei QI, say hi.
Hello, everyone. This is Wei QI.
Thank you. And Wei QI, we're gonna spend a lot of time today. This year has been an incredible year, and in a lot of the first year of this podcast, we've had to talk about COVID and trust issues, which have been a big issue that Jane's brought up multiple times, and it turned out to be so important. And we didn't talk as much about some hardcore informatics, and I wanted us to sort of get into some of what people do who call themselves informatics this year. And Wei QI has probably got the hardest area to describe that turns out to also be the most relevant of a lot of the things people do in informatics. And so if you were to talk to a 3-year-old about what you do, what do you tell your kids?
So first, I want to say just remember a word called phenotyping. So that's my job. Then I'm going to explain what is a phenotyping. I'll probably start with what is a phenotype. So the definition of a phenotype is any observable physical trait of a human being. So that's quite complex. But for example, people may have a different eye colors. People may have a different hairstyle. Some is straight, some is curly, and even blood types. That's a phenotype. Also, the height and the weight. That's all phenotype. But in my lab, we study phenotypes like a disease and why patient, taking the same medication, but they have a different response.
Okay, so does that make sense to you guys?
A phenotype basically has a lot to do with your physical characteristics, but it also has a lot to do with how you respond to certain medicines, such as my COVID vaccine hasn't bothered me at all. I know somebody that had their first shot and not feeling well. So I think that's what he's getting at. Some cancers, they respond to one person. Treatment may respond one way, and another person in the same stage with the same cancer may not respond at all to that treatment, right?
That's it?
Yeah.
So Jane, would you mind sharing a little bit about your husband's cancer?
He is a survivor. As a matter of fact, last week, a week and a half ago, he goes every 3 months for a procedure. I forget what it is, but it's a cystox. Oh, God.
It's not a cesarean.
No, it's ostomy or something like that. I don't know. But anyway, and they look, I guess there's a little camera involved, and they look in there, make sure that everything's okay and that there's no more tumors and everything's all clear. And thank goodness, again, he got a great report and everything is great. And so we're very, very pleased with that.
So how did they figure out that he had cancer?
Do you want to tell them? I mean, he's sitting right here. It makes it seem like he's.
Over.
It didn't happen to me. It happened to
There was
you.
blood in my urine.
Right. What happened is, truthfully, he saw blood in his urine. And I don't know, had you been struggling or feeling weird, or because you never said anything to me? No, nothing. And he noticed blood in his urine. And so he mentioned it to me. And of course, I was like, oh my God, you got to call the doctor. I think I was in LA at the time. And I was like, oh my God, you've got to call the doctor.
Yeah.
And he did. And he went over to meet with Dr. Duong, who is his doctor. And I think also he was urinating more.
Yeah,
he was getting, forgot about that. He was getting up he was literally, it got to the point where he was almost getting up every half hour.
Oh,
Duh.
Well, yeah, that was the problem.
I told you, it's been, ever since he's been cleared, I feel like I don't even want to, I guess I'm in denial. I don't even want to think that it ever even happened. And so it's a weird little mechanism, and I forget things, and I forgot that, but that is the case. And then he said he saw blood in his urine.
Got it.
So, yeah.
So I guess did he have kidney or bladder cancer?
Bladder,
which can be difficult to treat.
It was extremely aggressive.
It went from 5 centimeters when they first discovered it to almost 7.5 centimeters by the time they took it out, which was less than
30 days later.
Yeah, about 30 days later. He went through whatever they told him to do. He did. He changed his diet and has been trying to live right.
Well, the only person that told me to change my diet was Jane.
No, Well, what do you think Google is?
Not wasting a good crisis.
Everything. I researched everything, and what the best foods for each cancer, that you should eat, that are rich in whatever nutrients it is that you need for that particular cancer. And so,
yeah,
what can I tell you?
So Wei QI, when people get cancer and there's multiple treatment options, how does that relate to this whole phenotyping conversation?
Yeah, let me give you an example. There's a very classical example in cancer space is mercaptopurine, or people call that 6MP. So that's a special medication designed to treat acute leukemia. It's a very bad cancer. And the problem of the medication 6MP is it may damage bone marrow for certain patients if the patient, they don't have a special enzyme called the TPMP. And actually, this is not rare. Based on study, it's 1 out of 300 people in the globe population, they don't have a sufficient TPMP. So therefore, to understand the relationship between an individual's TPMP gene will help us to adjust the dose for the medication, so we can avoid some very fatal toxicity.
So let me go back and ask you a question. And Shannon, jump in anytime you have something to say, because I know you do. So how does somebody figure out that this gene even matters? I get the chemotherapy, I have my treatment response. Somebody else gets the therapy, they don't have the same treatment response. How do people figure out that gene has something to do with it?
Well, there's a very classical traditional study design will be like a genome-wide association study, or called GWAS. So the idea actually is to compare people who got the cancer and who don't have the cancer, and screen their genome, see whether or not there's a big difference. So that will help people to identify, some gene that's potentially that will increase the risk or lower the risk of a certain disease like cancers. And also, similar like some patients, when they take the same medication, they got a very bad outcome or bad reaction versus other people, they took the same medication, but there's no very bad outcomes. We can do a genome-wide association that can help us.
How is it that you've identified these things? What is your mechanism for identifying these gene mutations, and what does that process look like?
So this is a power about informatics, I would say, and technology. Actually, it's like we can go back to year 2000 around that. So we got the Human Genome Project just finished. So therefore, right now it's like the cost to genotype an individual sample is much cheaper. It's more affordable than ever before. So we can, in that case, we have some, we call that biobank. Biobank means we have their blood samples that can link back to their medical records. So we can do very interesting study efficiently. For example, in the biobank, we have let's say 500,000 individuals' medical records. We can identify who got certain disease. We can use others who don't have certain disease as a controls. Then we can just compare their genome. That will help us to identify some genes associated with the disease.
So Jane, have you ever heard of a biobank?
No, this is I'm sitting here and listening to this. It's very interesting. It's funny because I'll be like, oh, I don't know what he's talking about. And then all of a sudden it's clarified. I do understand what he's talking about. A lot of it is a little bit over my head. And when he mentioned that bank, is it a biobank?
Biobank, yes.
And if I'm to understand you correctly, in this biobank, my God, is blood?
So blood is the most common tissues we collect. And usually we collect those when it's kind of like when people routinely visit hospital and do their exams, and they have some, like a blood work, that'll be the leftover. Then we'll ask whether or not the patient, they want to make some contribution to research. And once we got the consent, they sign the consent, we can just collect those, blood sample for research.
The tube of blood that they use to run your, blood test, we take the extra blood and we store it in a bank.
Okay, biobank.
A few years ago, I knew this was true, but I'm not sure if it still is. Does Vanderbilt still have the largest biobank?
Single institute, we're the largest.
Okay, all right.
But of course, there's some larger national program. For example, All of Us, they collect more information from different institutes.
And All of Us was a project we talked about. It's a federally funded project to make essentially a national biobank where each person provides DNA to one large record, and then all researchers around the country and even around the world can access it and do the same kind of studies that Wei QI's talking about. People practice average care medicine. So as a doctor, I get a book. I turn to the page that says leukemia. It recommends a therapy. I give that to you. Well, what if the therapy is wrong? And then, so what we say is, what we don't want to do is average care medicine. We want to know exactly what is going on with Gary, and then use the information that other patients like Gary have taught us, which means other people who have the same phenotype, right?
Yes.
When you say other people that have the same phenotype, can it be something as simple as blue-eyed people? Or, what do you mean by the same, that they have the same phenotype?
So definitely, the eye color is a phenotype, but we're more interested in what we can help people, right? We definitely don't want to help people to change their eyes. Eye color, right? So our target phenotype is kind of like a disease. We care about another project we're doing actually is about the statin. Statin is a very common drug used to lower, people's bad cholesterol. but like based on previous study shows, like probably 1 out of 10 patients, they are not be able to tolerate the study.
And
So which means
statin.
they feel some pain of their muscles or they couldn't take the medication. So what happened there? Several years ago, there's a large trial. It's studying this. They find some gene called SLCO1B1, which one is strongly associated with myopathy, statin-induced myopathy. So right now, like a clinical guideline, we already put like once a week assign the statin, prescribe the statin to patients, we need to consider their gene information.
Wow. I mean, it's kind of like, that little emoji with the mind blown. Do you ever see that one? That's what it is. Well, there's also a lot of, there's a lot of issues interwoven in all of this. And I just find it very interesting to ponder.
Yeah.
I just want to say, because each individual is unique. So therefore, our job is trying to find the best suitable treatment based on each patient's uniqueness.
Wow. So you have to find their uniqueness in order to find some sort of common ground, though, because they're not the only ones who are going to be struggling with a particular medicine in that particular way. In my songwriting, I know that if I say something in a song and you don't understand it, there will be other people that won't understand it as well. So it's kind of the same thing to me, but it's.
Well, and that's, in song, this is a great parallel because when you as a songwriter or Shannon as an IT expert, counselor, funny influencer makes a comment, right? And it resonates well with other people. They are sometimes, in fact, somebody recently wrote something about this in the New York Times. Some of those people you knew from the very beginning, right? Like if you said something like, "Here's to all the divorced women out there," right? You know that song is going to work for the divorced women. You know the phenotype of the divorced woman, right? They're used to.
I do.
But so that. And then here's the thing. Somewhere there's a divorced man that song is working just as well for him as it did for a divorced woman. And I think, Wei QI, when you do these research projects and you're looking for a particular group of people who are similar, have you ever been surprised that while you're looking for one group of people who are similar, you discover a completely different group of people who have something else unique about them?
I think so. For example, we did lots of study using the genetic architecture. We combine, each genetic variance information together. We call that a polygenic risk score.
So what is a polygenic risk score?
So we already talked about what is a GWAS, right? It's a genome-wide association study. So we usually, once we got a big GWAS, we will find lots of genetic variants associated with a certain disease, the target disease or the target phenotype. Then we will use that information, combine those information mathematically to calculate the score. Then we'll say, based on the score, the patient is got a higher risk for that disease. Some patient may got lower risk to that disease. That's a polygenetic risk score.
I was going to ask, do you think that these are real numbers or, in other words, that people really experience this? Or
it turns out that when you look at cancer, these are exactly the types of breakthroughs that are helping people survive cancer.
Wow.
Some of what we're learning about this phenotyping from work that Wei QI's group has done has been really important in COVID, and it can even possibly be important in diseases like suicide, mental illnesses, because all of those are phenotypes. If you start saying,
I'm so sorry, but I wanted to ask him if I guess the answer would be yes, but that's so weird.
Ask the question. Yeah.
If it could be not only used, you were talking about using it for medications and why certain medications work on some patients or have a different effect on other patients. What about the disease itself? Is there any way that that there's a phenotyping involved there. Like this virus, it just seems so random. It seems, is it random or is it something that is there that well, I certainly don't know about, but maybe hasn't been discovered yet, or I don't know.
Well, certainly, of course, it's majority of our work is focused on different type of disease, and like we know, lots of genes associated with the type 2 diabetes we already know, and type 1 diabetes we know is there's some certain genes on your chromosome 6 is highly associated with that. And when we talk about the COVID-19, of course, we did lots of study on COVID-19. And one interesting study, we call that, what we did is like, at the very beginning, because we don't understand what COVID-19 looks like. It's this unknown disease. And we gradually collect some information from patients who test positive. And we also have some patients came into the hospital and test negative. So what we did, informatically, and we can compare their present symptoms. So that will help us to gradually understand, are there any unique symptoms strongly associated with the COVID-19 test positive? So we recently got a paper published. We find probably you already heard from news or media, it's like COVID-19 significantly associated with loss of taste and loss of smell. Yeah, we found that signal is 2 weeks earlier than CDC released a warning to the public. So that's a power of informatics and phenotyping.
Yeah, both of my sons had COVID. They're young men. And, thank goodness it was virtually nothing with one. And it was uncomfortable with my other, but they both recovered beautifully. And it just seemed to me, again, so random. So, and I know someone who is their age and got seriously sick with it. Yeah. And I know someone from it and is just about their age. So, it just seems so.
Yeah. So let me tell you about the exciting thing that relates to that Wei QI's been doing. So we're talking about one patient at a time, right? And you talk about COVID and how random it is. So there's more to the COVID story. And even though I wasn't going to talk too much about COVID, I will bring this thing up. So we know that there's this other group of people called post-acute COVID syndrome, a group of people who seem to have COVID and then they still have COVID brain, or they still seem to have problems with bone pain, or maybe other things, rashes, other diseases. And we still don't know what makes certain people likely to get that and which ones, can't. So if you had to do this the way that Wei QI does the research he usually does, all you would know is that for any one patient who came in, we could do these studies and we could figure out what's going on with them. But what if you could go across every single patient in the entire Nashville area and call them and say, you are at risk for this and this and this from COVID, and you are not at risk from this and this and this at COVID. In other words, what if we could do a phenotype that was a COVID risk phenotype for every single person at Vanderbilt? Would that be useful?
Absolutely.
So you're saying a phenotype which would be what you are at risk for, but it's a risk, right? It's not that you won't get COVID, it's the type of reaction you'll get to COVID or the way the COVID affects you?
Yes, it's challenging, but it's possible. When I say challenging, it's because COVID is different from other common disease, because we already accumulate a huge amount of data for certain common disease like CVD, even different type of cancers. But COVID-19 is relatively new in our data. Nobody understands that yet. And we have a very, compared to other disease, we have a very limited number of patients information for us for analysis. But once the data got accumulated more and more, yes, it's very, very possible.
One of the questions that that I really had, we haven't even come to, but I want to because it's in the news right now.
Go for it.
The CRISPR.
Yeah, I just heard them talking about that this morning.
So, Wei, is any of your work involved in that? And what are your concerns?
Is it about the gene editing technology?
Yeah,
right?
CRISPR-Cas9.
Yeah.
So, number one, that's not my expertise, and I don't know too much detail and about the CRISPR technology at this stage. That's a very promising technology that can help, certain people with some, serious genetic problem. And of course, there's lots of ethical concerns and who should do this under the procedure and how to do that. I think that's beyond my knowledge to answer that.
But are they building off of the human genome work that you've been involved in and off of the phenotyping? Because to me, it sounds like they had to have that as the base level to go forward and actually manipulate genetics.
Yeah, there are more.
Right?
There are more on the genetic side.
It's kind of related, meaning, so sickle cell is known to be a one gene mutation. Okay, it's one. Actually, it's even smaller than that, right? It's one DNA nucleotide replacement. Okay, and so if you could edit that one nucleotide and fix it, you could stop what is also a very bizarre random illness, because many patients with sickle cell disease, not many, but a large number of patients with sickle cell disease have minimal symptoms. But there's this other group of people who have the same single gene mutation, who have silent strokes when they're babies, who have painful crises, sometimes who have these really awful hemolytic crises where they lose all of their, like a lot of their red cells. It's a very serious disease, a thing called chest syndrome, where they're in the ICU and they have to get double and triple volume blood transfusions. So they get all their blood exchanged twice from one thing. And so what if we had a technique where we could go in, take out some of their cells, edit out the sickle cell, right? So edit out the gene deletion, edit in the replacement nucleotide, wipe out the rest of their bone marrow, and then put these new fixed cells in, okay?
They were just talking about that on MSNBC this morning.
Yeah,
Right.
well, that's done.
It was.
Yeah, so we've done that, right? And that's been something Francis Collins talked about. There's a couple of patients now who have had their sickle cell cured through CRISPR-Cas9 related technologies, gene editing technologies. But to get to that, like, let's say that you are known to have a certain disease that affects you when you're older, and Wei Qi's research helps to find out that there's a particular genetic variant that's causing that disease. Theoretically, that research, when done, could identify the variant, and we could fix that variant using CRISPR-Cas9. I think that's the connection you're looking for.
Oh, so they're connected that way.
Yeah. So, because one of the things that's fascinated me, was the first cure for AIDS and HIV was through a bone marrow transplant, based on knowing that if you had a heritable gene that was passed down through the Black Plague, that if you had this gene, you were not impacted by the plague. You were pretty much, you wouldn't catch it.
Right.
And they discovered that gene through hemophiliacs that did not get HIV before the blood supply was cleaned up. And some doctor in Germany, I think it was the one that said, okay, my patient is HIV positive and also needs a bone marrow transplant. I'm going to look for this genetic material. Boom. And I think that's awesome. And I think curing sickle cell, I did a paper on that when I was in 5th grade, believe it or not. That was my first public speech, was on sickle cell anemia. But I think that's wonderful. But I've also seen Jurassic Park. And
see, Wei Qi, this is what happens. We have this conversation going talking about some really great informatics, and then Shannon comes in and brings up dinosaurs and a fictitious movie. Go ahead, Shannon, please, go ahead.
But I mean, what is the quote? Your scientists, while they were trying to figure out if they could, they never talked about whether they should. And so when you get into this kind of stuff, like, I think being able to cure sickle cell anemia is great. But then what if a population in a powerful country elects a malignant narcissist with an IQ of a toy potato and decides to start manipulating genes and creates? Do you understand what I'm saying? I mean, okay, now you've got this technology out there. Where does that stop? You know what I mean? And what are the concerns, and how do you keep that? Like, I could just see Jurassic Park. I'm sorry.
I just want to say, it's as academia, we consider this very serious. That's why each project we have like IRB approved, reviewed. So I just want to say this is we consider that a very serious issue.
Yeah.
For that patient, who got cured based on the bone transplant, I remember. I think that reason is that's probably the last option for that patient. If I remember correctly, it's the patient got the cancer and also
he had leukemia.
Right.
He got leukemia and.
Yeah, that's a very unique case, but that's a great discovery, I would say.
There's a book that came out last year.
You say The Master Race?
Well, The Master Race is a good example. There's a book called Change Agent that came out last year from an author I know, but right this second I'm blanking on because I'm overworked and tired. And it's all about the use of CRISPR-Cas9 to change phenotypes.
There you go. That is, that's the fear. Not necessarily my fear, because you know what? I'm one of those people who believes that if it's available and if it was created in the mind of a human, other humans are going to have at it. And they're gonna, there's the good and the evil, the little angel and the devil.
Well, the book I'm thinking of is by Daniel Suarez called Change Agent. Read it. It's very...
Hold on, Change Agent.
Yeah, it's a good book. So, Wei QI, let me just ask you, you're, as a scientist who does really cutting edge work with phenotyping, do you ever worry that people are going to use your techniques for bad things?
That's a question. For phenotyping, I haven't thought about that. I think it's my job is to advance the phenotyping technology so people can do a better research. That's all I'm focused. I haven't thought about any people can use that badly.
Because, here's the thing, guys.
Hmm?
Of course they can, right? I mean, part of the challenge we have in medicine is when you do cutting edge research with data, you hope that it's going to be used for good and to advance healthcare quality. There's just no way to know whether a paper that somebody like Wei QI publishes doesn't get picked up by people who decide they're going to take that in a wrong direction. But as Wei QI pointed out, we have a lot of safeguards. So for example, the biobank that you heard about, you could say to yourself, well, what if you wanted to get in that biobank and find all the patients who had the gay gene and then kill them, right?
Bingo.
Right. Well, the answer is, number one, we have very sophisticated security that prevents people to get access to the biobank itself. Number two, you have all kinds of permissions you need to get access to any of the data that connects to that biobank. And then, of course, number three, if anybody's trying to do regular research, they have to go through an institutional review board that looks at exactly the kind of research they're doing. Now, does that prevent me from secretly doing another research project? Absolutely, it doesn't, but I will be fired, okay? So the question is, why am I doing it to try to advance my career, or am I doing it because I'm an agent of a state who wants to do something bad to the United States? And if it was me trying to advance my own career, that would be suicide. If I'm doing it with the intent of doing something criminal, yeah, we have other safeguards that we would have to take advantage of there, like background checks before you get hired, which is one of the reasons why Vanderbilt does background checks. We want to make sure that everybody who's there doesn't have a criminal record.
Exactly.
But that's a really important point that you make in terms of what we do in research. And Wei Qi's got some techniques and is a now internationally known researcher that would make some of the things he does a lightning rod. But the point is,
Yeah.
the system is built so that we can hopefully use it for good, because
Good.
we do want to cure cancer patients, and we do want to cure sickle cell disease, and we do want to figure out what makes people like Shannon so funny. What's the phenotype that you need to give other people to make them funny and irreverent like Shannon?
I know what it is. It's having a disastrous childhood. That's a question. Are you funny, or did you have a good childhood?
Oh my gosh.
The other thing is, we know that there are certain environmental areas. There's been a belief for a long time that patients who are obese have changes in the genetics of the organisms in their stomachs and their lining of their GI tract, called microbiome, but also that it's possible some of the foods we eat affect our gene expression in our body.
Oh,
Wow.
so like it's my jelly beans and not the.
It's possible. I mean, and so, a part of the work that people like Wei Qi does, because he's mostly talking about the genes you were born with, also called germline, but there are the genes that patients with cancer have, which are called somatic mutations, meaning a particular part of the body. And then there's this third thing, which is epigenetics. Your environment changes your genes, and that's epigenetics. Have you done any epigenetics projects, Wei Qi?
No, I haven't. Yeah, I haven't. Microbiome would be a very interesting topic. Yeah, I haven't done any epigenetic study.
All of that genetics, as it turns out, is a part of your phenotyping.
So your environment changes your genes. Is that because of what you said when you said that there are viruses that can attach themselves? They're almost like outside forces that can attach themselves to your DNA. Wouldn't that change your DNA if something has attached itself to your DNA? Wouldn't that change the strand? And
the answer is yes. So environment, people believe, again, this is theoretical. There are some limited studies, especially animal models. Environment, nutrition, behavior, people who are type A, stress, physical activity, working habits, smoking, definitely, alcohol consumption, definitely impacts your genetics.
wow, that's
not in a way that you can pass on to your children, because that's eggs and sperm.
right. And that's the genes that were almost hardwired into you when you were born, right? I mean,
so Kevin, you're talking about like mesothelioma from asbestos exposure, right?
Yes, I am. I'm talking about an insult like asbestos actually impacts the tissue of the mesothelium in this case, that causes it to become transformed into something that is oncologic, that can cause cancer. But that same asbestos doesn't necessarily change anything about my fingernails or my skin. And that's a classic example of a somatic mutation. It's one particular part of your body, not all of your body.
Okay.
Good question. So listen, in our last couple of minutes, I have two questions, one for Wei Qi, one for Jane. So Wei Qi, what's the thing that you're hoping to do in your research in the next 5 years that everybody in the world's going to know about?
We are living, in big data era, but, this is what in my mind. We got lots of data, but we haven't, really take advantage of those big data. There's many, many different reasons. You can say the data quality issue, or we don't have a sufficient tool to do that. So hopefully, in the next decade, I really want to, build up some method or approaches that can help us to take advantage of this data, so we can just bring more benefits to our patients. That'll be our goal.
That's a big deal.
Yeah.
well, that's a wonderful goal.
So I'm sure you guys will be hearing about this. I mean, this guy's pretty amazing. So Jane, I know you're thinking I'm going to ask you to play a song. And guess what? I'm not.
You're not.
Uh-oh.
She was expecting it. But here's what I do want to do. So you are a teacher of musicians around town. And around the country, really,
Right.
right? And so we've had a conversation today about genetics. This is a super hot topic. How do musicians decide, A, what you're going to write about, and B, if there's a way to translate like a conversation like this into something that matters? So like if you were taking the conversation today and you were writing something about Gary, how do you do that? Like, how do you get from that to something that we could all appreciate?
Well, I mean, basically, you're asking how a song is born. Okay, well, there are different ways that song ideas come to fruition. There are where you actually, in a conversation, you hear somebody say something and you think to yourself, oh, that would make a great song. That would make a great song. And, so, or you're just inspired through events in the world or events in your life or whatever to write something. You can't wait for inspiration. You have to sit down, and actually sometimes it's hard work coming up with a great idea for a song. And I was going to play a song. I practiced and everything.
Okay, you can play a song. But before you play the song, let's write like the smallest little. Do you do the lyric or the music?
I do both.
Okay, let's do the smallest little song about phenotyping.
Oh my God.
Oh, I know one. It's in the genes.
It's in your genes.
That's right. So do we start with the hook? Do we have to start with the hook?
Well, what would the hook be?
Well, I don't know. So I'm going to start with Wei QI. If there was a song about your work and there was a thing that everybody was going to start saying around the country about your work, what would it be? What's a hook? What's a good phrase that you would hear a song say?
I would say everybody is unique. So, we should get some unique treatment.
Don't make me like her.
Call the song unique.
Okay, so unique.
To me would be the hook would be unique. I don't know where you're going with it or whatever, but I mean, you and me, but everything's unique. So what are you going to say about give me, come on, what are we calling this again? Forget the word unique. You were talking about phenotypes and,
Yeah.
you need to include the words that, that you're going to be singing about that tell the story.
So do you embrace the complicated words, or do you let them go because you don't want to confuse people?
I don't care. I mean, I'm big on multisyllabic words.
Phenotype.
Yeah, phenotype. Yeah, that's only phenotype is only 3.
Okay. How about phenotypical?
Phenotype is good.
How about phenotypical?
Phenotypical. There you go. Is there such a word?
No. But isn't that wouldn't phenotypical be the group
That's
of people
hilarious.
who have the same phenotype?
Phenotypical.
You could do a lot with this. You could play on gene, Gene, and gene, Jean. Think about it.
So gene and gene.
It's all in the genes.
Okay, this is hard.
You think?
So your first step is we're going to stop. But your first step is you started making a little bit of got a chord. You picked a key.
Oh, I just usually do. I usually, if you're trying to come up with an idea, and I don't really have an idea at the time, I sometimes I just let the music guide me almost. I mean, sometimes I'll sit down at the piano, sometimes like now with the guitar, and just kind of noodle around with it and see what comes out. And generally speaking, what you start out with is very rarely what you end up with.
Yeah.
Songs take on a life of their own. And and so they move through a basic concept.
Well, thank you for giving us a sense of like what it's like to start the songwriting process.
This song that I was going to do.
Not going to do.
Oh, I'll do it if you have time and you want me to.
I can edit I can edit stuff out.
It kind of speaks to the question, interestingly enough, because the idea was not mine. The idea was a friend of mine, and we were talking about, well, we write together, and we were talking about ideas one day, not in a writing appointment, just talking about ideas. And I said, this was right after the incident at Lafayette Park, where the protesters were peacefully protesting, and he sicked, the tear gas and the army on him. And it just, when something fires me up, I can't let it go, and I have to write about it. And she came up with this idea of I am one. This was her idea. And I said, you're one what? And she said, well, different people, I'm like all these different people, but I'm one, she's, I don't know where to go with it. So I'll play it for you.
Do.
Okay. Let's see. I'm not in the greatest voice right now. I can tell you my voice is in the basement. Never thought I'd see the day, soldiers in our streets.
Never thought I'd see the day, soldiers in our streets, silencing the people who were marching for peace. Bridges crossed and bridges burned. You'd think by now we would have learned, but here we are, and history repeats. I am one who did nothing when I saw what was wrong. I am one who said the situation won't last very long. I am one who feared that one voice could never be enough. I am one who learned that we must never give up, and who will speak the truth till we overcome, and all of our work is done. I am one. I am one. We all look different, but we all bleed red, woven in a tapestry with a common thread. It's a never-ending struggle to protect the ties that bind so many truths. But love is love, and grace is colorblind. I am one who did nothing when I saw what was wrong. I am one who said the situation won't last very long. I am one who feared that one voice could never be enough. I am one who learned that we must never give up. Who will speak the truth till we overcome, and all of our work is done. I am one. I am one, but I am not alone. Heading down this broken road, paved with shattered pieces.
There we
That
go.
was fabulous.
Oh.
You know what's really funny? I'm listening to that song thinking about Shannon and the fact that that's been the opposite of Shannon. Like she's been out there being the one who did everything while
Right. Well, you know what? It's interesting because we're going to do it. Well, we did a lyric video of it, not with me singing, with a great singer singing it. And, but we want to do a video. And my idea is when it comes to the chorus, we have different people, you know, they hold up the signs, right? One person goes, you know, I did nothing when I saw what was wrong. And the other person holds up a sign and says, it won't last very long, you know, and each person, and in each chorus, they're different people, because the truth is there's a little bit of that in every one of us.
yeah.
And
And what's great about that song is that it's a song that you think is going to be saying something. It's a positive anthem, except the lyrics are actually a negative anthem, right? It's I'm guilty, as opposed to I am, you know, one
but,
always.
you know what? But I'm not alone. And the truth is we are stronger together and we will overcome. And until that time when we do, we just have to keep on keeping on and hanging together. So
Well, thank you for sharing that.
I like that song.
I could see you were smiling because you were thinking, aha, I'm not that.
Well, you know what, Shannon, you should check it out on YouTube. There's a lyric video and the girl that's singing it is amazing.
I'm going to pull that down and play it here so that everybody can hear it. Not today. I'm going to put it in the podcast.
No, not today. Oh, but I will.
That'll be perfect.
And Wei QI, what I hear in that song, which one of the things we talked about today, which I'm going to make sure I think about some, is we don't talk much about how we as researchers doing really cutting edge research are trusting to society to be the one to use it for good and not the one to use it for bad. You know,
I've seen too much. I've seen too much.
Yeah, you have. But I don't talk about that. I mean, as a chair of a department that does data science research, we observe, we develop methods, we put them in the open source. I mean, do you have stuff that's in Creative Commons? Wei QI, do you have anything in the open source environment for people to use?
Yeah, like Netty, like a Fico, those kind of stuff.
Yeah. So we write code, guys, and then we put it out in the world for other people to use it. We don't really ever know because we give it away. It's often because it's funded by your tax dollars. We don't know if somebody's going to do something with that code that leads to something we didn't really want to see happen. And I think Wei QI's comment about that speaks to, both what we have to make sure we teach our scientists, because Wei QI, your comment was, I don't really think about that as much. You're thinking about the method, but I think it's probably not a bad idea for us to all at least recognize.
Well, just be cognizant of it, because there are, as far as, as I was listening to you all talk about this, I mean, that was going through my mind, the mad scientist. I mean, like I said, the master race. But what I do, truthfully, I mean, not even close to importance, but what I do, it's the same thing, though. I put something out there and it's like people who I've had hit songs. I don't know what people use those songs for. I have no idea what they use them for. And, you just put them
I think that it really, especially in this day and time, and maybe it's just because of some of the stuff I've been involved with this last year, I think a good question at the end of everything before you submit it anywhere is, what could somebody do with this if they're a bad actor?
Well, you know what? It's not so much in what I do. It's could be as harmless as I don't want him using my song because I don't like him, and I don't want him using my song. I am. Oh my!
Whoever wrote that little song is probably getting tired of it too.
Oh my God, he's getting very rich. Let me tell you. Yeah. But anyway, I really have to get going.
Yeah, so do I. Hey, everybody! Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You were terrific, and I think I have a feeling that we're going to wait for Jane's next song to have something about "I Am One" being phenotypes.
It was so.
Well, that was an interesting ride, huh? So glad you could join us. By the way, if you're new to Informatics in the Round, We have a lot of episodes from last year that are still absolutely worth you taking some time to hear. We covered Black Lives Matter and George Floyd. We covered diversity, equity, and inclusion. We covered all types of areas in the informatics space. And we covered a ton about COVID and trust and truth. It was a really great year. Anyway, thanks again. I'm looking forward to adding to your podcast choices again in a few more weeks. Till then, mask up.